Hey, hi, howdy. Welcome again, music lovers. We've reached episode number 5 of Matt and Cheryl's GenExcellent playlist. I'm Matt,
I'm Sheryl.
and today we enter the world of 1975. And some great music came out, even though I think the perception is when you look at the 70s, the decade of the 70s music, 75 is looked at as maybe one of the down years, maybe the downest of the down year. I would say 78 if I were picking the worst year for music in that decade. 75, just kind of the dawn, just before punk and new wave came in to shake things up. 75 looked at it as this bloated era of music. So much great music came out in 1975, though, and we're just going to be scratching the surface of that as Sheryl and I pick two of our favorites from the year to add to the playlist, go along with one of the biggest hits of 1975. But as we always like to do to start the show, we're going to talk about what has been grooving us lately. Now, Sheryl, you referenced the greatest music magazine of them all, I think, in our last episode. For you YouTube viewers, I'm showing a copy of the wonderful Mojo magazine,
Mojo magazine.
which I've been reading avidly for decades now. I think it first came out when I was living in Atlanta, working at the Olympics and working for the Borders record store there in Buckhead, their amazing flagship store that they built while I lived there. I didn't pick up on it as a regular reader and purchaser until a couple of years later, and I'm still hoping one day to get issues 1 for $40 in my collection. They go for big bucks now if you want to buy those
They
early
do,
Mojo
because
issues.
we have like the first 100 issues.
Yeah,
Maybe you want to buy them from us.
yeah. If you're looking to unload them at a reasonable price, I've been trying to get those for years. Anyhow, Mojo does this cool thing, and they have since almost the very beginning, where early in the magazine they take three, usually musicians, sometimes an actor or just a famous person, and they ask them this regular series of questions about their music listening habits and their favorite stuff. And I'm going to jump on Sheryl today and ambush her with some of these
Oh
questions.
boy.
But question number one in this section is basically what we do on all these episodes of the podcast. In addition to adding to our playlist and going through the years, we like to riff on what's turning us on currently, what we're listening to a lot. So Sheryl, in the words of Mojo magazine, what are you currently grooving to?
Okay, well, this is going to be a little bit longer than what they normally print in the magazine, which is just
That's
like a tiny
okay.
blurb. So, I actually started going down a rabbit hole just very randomly this week that I knew nothing about. The band that really drew my attention, they're called AMANAZ, AMANAZ, and the album is called Africa. It's actually an acronym, and the acronym stands for Ask Me About Nice Artists in Zambia. That's what their name acronym
Ask
is.
me about nice
Ask
artists.
me about nice artists in Zambia.
In Zambia, okay.
Because
AMANAZ.
they are.
Is that kind of a play on words? Play on words with ominous, you think? AMANAZ,
No,
ominous?
I don't think so. They just came up with this word they liked, and they were thinking of it more of the acronym. So anyway, this band is from Zambia. They came out. Their one album came out in 1975, and they're part of this movement that now is known as Zamrock, which lasted for about 5 years between 72 and 76. Basically, at the time, Zambia was under British rule, so they were, importing albums, getting albums from the UK, listening to the popular music of that time.
And what's the time period we're talking about again here?
72. Well, this when these albums were recorded was between 72 and 76. From the 50s, they were getting music coming in that was really popular in Zambia at the time. Like, that's the music they were listening to. But then once the country announced independence, this was earlier in the 60s, like 64, the president decided that they could only play Zambian music on the radio. So
like CanCon.
I don't know what that is.
Canada, in Canadian broadcasting, they are required. All broadcasters are required to have a certain percentage of content that is Canadian. So that's why when you go up and turn on the radio when you're in Vancouver and you listen to like rock radio, you're hearing all of these like my example is Chilliwack. Chilliwack had that great
Oh my
one-hit wonder in
God,
the United
yes.
States.
Gone, gone,
And
gone,
you
been
will
gone
actually
so
hear
long, been
other.
gone, gone, gone so long.
Exactly. Loved it when it came out, still do.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
if you go up in Canada, you'll actually hear other Chilliwack songs. You'll
yeah. I
you'll
had
hear
that happen to me actually when I was in Vancouver. I turned on the radio and there's this song, and I'm like, what is this? Why don't I know this song? It's like a perfect glam rock song from the 70s. And so I look it up. And it's a song called Roxy Roller, and it's done by Nick Gilder, Hot Child in the
Oh yeah,
City.
yeah. He's Canadian.
His
Huh?
band, he's Canadian.
I didn't know
So it
that.
was Yeah. So it was a song that he did with his band. God, now I can't remember the name of the band, but they had that was their big hit. And it's like a perfect glam rock pop single. And so now I'm like, okay, now I know what that is. But you never hear that on the radio here.
Oh, sure. No. And by the way, if you're ever in Calgary, there is a great museum. It's the Canadian Music Museum or Music Hall of Fame. Excellent museum. Well worth a visit if you're ever in Calgary. Yeah.
Okay, so going back to Zambia, this is what they were doing there. So the president, made this announcement that they have to play 95% Zambian artists. So now all of a sudden these musicians are like, well, we better go into the studio and record some albums then, because they hadn't recorded this music. They just, these bands, there's a handful of bands. I mean, there's probably lots of them, but the ones that really kind of became popular had been performing live, and they just hadn't really recorded their music. So there were a couple studios. One was called DB, I think, that a lot of these bands went to and recorded their albums. But it's so fascinating because when you listen to this stuff, you're thinking, okay, African, maybe something like Fela Kuti that Ginger Baker went and recorded with in Nigeria, and like that sound, the African drumming. No, it sounds like Blue Cheer, the Rolling Stones, Deep Purple, Cream, or things that could be on the Nuggets box set, which if anybody's not familiar with that, it's the Garage Bands. It's a collection that Lenny Kaye from Patti Smith's group put together.
Essential music.
Essential. And it's garage band, garage rock from the 60s, songs that are kind of one hits or one offs. Anyway, that's where this falls into, what category this music would fall into. Now, it does have the African rhythms behind it. It does have, some of the songs are sung in their native tongue, but most of them are sung in English. And as I went along, I start playing this. I'm just like instantly, this is amazing. And I didn't realize, though, at the time when I first started listening to it, anybody who's a fan of Ted Lasso, there's an episode in season 2. At the end of this episode, they play a song from this album. It's called Call On My Friend. And I remember when that came on, when we were watching Ted Lasso, when that song came on, and I was like, wow, this is a really cool song. And I may have even looked it up at the time, but it just didn't spark me to go any further with it. So that song is on this album. And I would say anybody who's interested in this, go listen to the album and start with that song, because it's great. It is like an amazing song, and you might recognize it from Ted Lasso if you've seen the show. But then as you go through the whole album, I mean, really, some of it, Matt, you will really like. Some of it has like scream and guitar, like funkadelic guitar.
Okay.
And
funkadelic nearly made my 74 playlist, but got diverted.
That's the kind of stuff these guys were doing. But this album in particular, so there's a couple bands. Another one's called Witch, and theirs is an acronym too, which stands for We Intend to Cause Havoc.
That is a really cool acronym right there. That's a cool acronym.
So that one you can kind of see. They were more politically charged. Their lyrics
obviously,
were, This AMANAZ band was not quite to that point. And you can tell by the music too. And this is the album I keep wanting to go back to, because it has this like really melancholy, but also kind of uplifting feel to it at the same time. Some of the songs, actually, there's one song on there called Sunday Morning. It's not the Velvet Underground Sunday Morning.
Morning.
It sounds very similar to Oh Sweet Nothing from Loaded. Do you know that song? It's
not off the top of my head. Yeah.
It kind of sounds like Dear Mr. Fantasy. It has the same
that I do know
line. Okay. It's very similar to that. I'm like, this sounds so. It's like when you hear it, that's what's so fascinating to me. When you hear this album, it all sounds very familiar. But there's still something there. I mean, obviously they do bring in, like I said, the drum, the beats kind of have the African feel. Some of them are sung in their native language. So it's not, it's not from America, but it's just amazing the way they weave this American rock sound into it. And it's recorded pretty primitively. The drums kind of sound like trash cans, and but that's part of the appeal. That's part of the, what makes it so engaging, I think. This album was released actually for a Record Store Day release in 2015. And there's a label called Now and Again Records. A guy or two guys or someone who owned this label, they went back and found all this music. They approached the musicians. Now, sadly, a lot of these musicians died of AIDS in the 80s. AIDS was just everywhere there.
Ravaging the continent. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a couple documentaries on YouTube about this music movement, which I would recommend go watching because they're really interesting. And they talk to two of the guys, two of the guys from Witch, Ricky and Jaggery, who took his name from Mick Jagger. They interview them and they're still around. So anyway, these two guys came and they found all this music and they've been re-releasing it since 2009, I think is when they started this label. And if you go on the Now and Again website, they've got a whole list of all the things that are available. And I've been falling down this rabbit hole for a few days now, and there's so much there. And it's so fascinating and cool. There are two Zamrock collections that you can find on Spotify too that are a good place to start because they feature all the big bands. But I would definitely recommend this AMANAZ album. So far, of all the ones that I've listened to, this is the one I want to keep going back to.
Well, Sheryl, that is a fascinating and surprising choice. I know you tend to paint yourself as someone pretty set in your ways with your musical tastes, and but that's going way off track for you. I think that's really cool.
Well, I think I used to be a lot more like when you knew me back in the 90s. That's when I was saying, and you would people would recommend things. I'm no. I was much more closed-minded back then in my 20s.
Well, just as a brief prelude, I'm going to show you, you YouTube viewers, what I've been grooving on lately. It's an album by a band called Spirit, called Spirit of 76. Now you know how much I paid for this 2-disc set, which is a pretty good bargain, I think. Anyhow, before I talk about that, I want to continue with the Mojo quiz on Sheryl here.
Okay.
Sheryl bought your favorite record of all time. What's the first thing that comes to your mind? Don't think too hard. If push comes to shove, what is your all-time favorite album?
Quadrophenia.
Ooh, it's not a Beatles record. It's not a Beatles record. It's Quadrophenia.
I guess not, because that's the first thing that came to my head. Yeah.
We covered that in 1973. So Sheryl is massive Beatles fan, but almost equally big Who fan, as we will find out as we dig into the year 1975 when we continue. Sheryl, what was the first record you ever bought, and where did you buy it?
I guess I would have to say Foreigner 4, because I remember asking for that for my birthday and getting it.
Big record in the early 80s.
Huge.
Foreigner 4.
Yeah.
I remember when I first heard Waiting for a Girl Like You on the radio. There's just these certain songs over the years. First time you hear them on the radio, it's just like a slap in the face.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's a big hit. Boom.
Jukebox Hero.
Yeah. Urgent, I think, was the first single off that.
Yeah.
All good records. Okay, now this is good for you since you are a musician, you're a drummer. Which musician, other than yourself, have you ever wanted to be?
I've thought about this before, and it's not necessarily like I want to be him, but if I could be a drummer in any band, it would be Bill Berry from REM.
Oh, interesting. Why is that? Just
I don't know. I just
love...
No, it has nothing to do with him as a person or them as a band. I just love REM so much, and I love the way that he drums. I love the way it sounds.
Underrated.
With that. And if I'm going to play music with if I'm just going to play to something, that's what I like to play to the most.
Yeah, I like that
and
answer.
I can actually play most of that stuff too, so that helps.
What do you sing in the shower?
I don't sing in the shower.
You don't ever play with the wonderful bathroom acoustics and so you can really hear your voice in its best light?
Yeah, I guess I have a little bit, but there's no specific song that I do that with. So
nothing
I don't
that pops to mind? Nothing at all? Right.
No.
What is your favorite Saturday night record? So party time, what gets
Party record.
you up and moving, excited, ready to go? Good time.
Probably Trust Elvis Costello.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Now that's funny you bring that one up. I've been on the lookout for that for some you never see that record used for some reason.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I've got a whole lot of Costello stuff, and I've been looking for that. I have a feeling that's going to be one of my favorites when I get around to it, but you never see it.
Huh, that's interesting. It's actually my favorite Elvis Costello album, and I love him, and I'm a huge fan of This Year's Model and Oliver's Army and all. I love all of his classic albums, but that's my favorite. Right? And actually, I should change that answer really, because for Saturday night, I would say it's This Year's Model. That's the most party, like upbeat album. Trust is almost more like a Sunday morning album, really.
Okay. I think Trust. The reason I have a little fascination with Trust, not only because it seems to be elusive, and I'm a bargain shop. I just look for things used, and I think that's the first Elvis Costello where I'm kind of have a contemporary awareness of the artist, and then maybe that was his record that was out at the time, and I just can kind of picture having seen the album cover and being aware of it from that time period, even though I knew very little about his music. So that's an interesting choice. And then the last one, you already said, your Sunday morning record. What's your Sunday morning record?
Actually, I would say this AMANAZ Africa is a great Sunday morning record.
So more of a relaxed early morning vibe. Okay. Well, there we go. The Mojo quiz. So now I mentioned the record I'm listening to, Spirit. I think I already mentioned in an earlier podcast that at least right now, my favorite album of all time is by this band, Spirit. It's called The 12 Dreams of Dr. Sardonicus. It came out in 1970. So Spirit of 76, I only recently picked this up. I've had it on my radar for years. I remember hearing at least one full side of this album way back in the 70s in high school on KISW. And I remember thinking at the time, I don't know how aware I was of Spirit or knew what I knew about their music at the time. I got to think I was aware of them and at least knew about I Got a Line on You, and maybe a few songs off Sardonicus were kind of FM rock staples. Mr. Skin, you'd hear that on rock stations. Animal Zoo occasionally was a single off that record. And then Nature's Way, which is probably the best known song off that album. Kind of a canon classic now. But weird band, Spirit. Very unusual. So they're out of that 60s Sunset Strip scene, which I so love. But they're just a little different from everything. Strange dynamic in this band. First of all, you start with the mainstay. The centerpiece of the band is a guy named Randy California. Now, if that's not a rock star name, I don't know what is. His real name is Randy Wolf. He's an LA kid, but as a teenager, his family moved from LA to New York because his stepfather, who was a jazz drummer, moved the family there for work. He was getting gigs. While in New York, he crossed paths with another young budding musician who at that time was performing under the name Jimmy James. His band was Jimmy James and the Blue Flames, and we're talking about Jimi Hendrix, who was born in Seattle, as we all know, in the Pacific Northwest. So these guys crossed paths, and Randy Wolf ended up playing in Jimmy's group as the second guitarist at the ripe age of 15 years old. And they're gigging in New York at the clubs there, starting to build a name for themselves. And then Jimmy gets talent spotted by Chaz Chandler, the former Animals bassist, signs a management deal with him. Chaz Chandler eventually takes Jimmy to England. He's completely unheard of at this point. At some point, he's calling himself Jimi Hendrix. I don't know where that occurs in the timeline. But Jimmy wanted Randy to join him, go to England, where they were going to form a band. And can you just imagine if that had come to pass, a band with these two amazing musicians? Randy California is a top-tier guitarist, a fantastic guitarist. but he was so young, his parents refused to let him go. So he stayed behind. Jimmy went to London. The rest was history. Formed the Jimi Hendrix Experience with a couple of English musicians, Noel Redding and Mitch Mitchell. And as I said, the rest is history. Rock stardom and fame transpired. Meanwhile, Randy Wolf would eventually be a part of a group called the Red Roosters. He's back in LA at this point, mid-60s, still a young kid. Now, they would eventually transform into Spirit. They first went by the name Spirits Rebellious, which is a reference to a Khalil Gibran book, shortened the name to Spirit. Something very unique about the dynamic of this band in the annals of rock, because the drummer was Randy's stepfather.
He's like 40.
Yes, yeah. Ed Cassidy's his name. So Ed Cassidy, the reason they moved from LA to New York, because he's a jazz drummer, he's getting gigs in New York, and Randy eventually is in the same band with Ed, who's, they're rock bands drawing on, roots music and folk and rock and roll, not jazz. But very unusual that you'd have Randy, who is really young when Spirit first started recording, barely a teenager. And then his stepfather, Ed Cassidy, who's really old to be in a rock and roll band at that time. I mean, this guy is ancient in rock and roll terms. Not only that, very distinctive looking fella, Ed Cassidy, completely shaved head. Now, nowadays, that doesn't really draw a second glance. Back then, super weird. Super weird to have this. And this is before Kojak. Kojak came out in 1973, Telly Savalas.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Telly Savalas was a known actor by this point from the 60s. But to go around with a completely shaved, clean head, very strange during this time period.
Yeah.
And to have this
their first album has that kind of like collage of all their heads, and there's half of it is the shaved head of Ed Cassidy, and then you got the big poofy hair on the other side. Probably Randy, California.
So they're in that super fertile LA scene in the 60s, with Buffalo, Springfield, the Byrds, and all these amazing bands playing Sunstress at Love, playing the Strip at that time. They sign up with Lou Adler's Ode Records label. Lou Adler had made a name for himself with Managing Mamas and the Papas. He would later hit big with Carole King, the Tapestry album in 1970. Ode Records distributed by Epic via CBS Records. So the first album, self-titled Spirit, really cool album. What amazes me about that is Fresh Garbage, probably the best known track on that, kind of predates Santana with that Latin feel in the beat. And then there was a hit record, early 2000s, I think, that sampled that. I want to say it was Janet Jackson or Pink, maybe, that sampled it. It had a big hit with a sample of that beat. Da-da, ba-da, ba-ba, ba-da, ba-da-da, da-da-da, da-da-da. Fresh Garbage. A really cool song. The first single for that was such a strange choice. It's a song called Mechanical World. Very slow, very heavy, dirgy. So it predates Black Sabbath, really, in its feel. Doesn't have the sonic wallop of that, first Black Sabbath album, but kind of the same feel, the same vibe. Real heavy, dark song. Fever Dream kind of lyrics. Bizarre song. Just a lot of cool influences in this band, and a strong jazz influence, because not only of Ed Cassidy, who was a jazz cat, but the keyboard player, John Locke, also coming from a jazz background. So a very strong jazz influence in their music, which kind of set them apart from a lot of the psychedelic bands of that era. So the original incarnation of Spirit recorded 4 records. The first one, self-titled. The second one's called The Family That Plays Together Stays Together. That's they had their only real hit on that record, called I Got a Line on You. Just a classic song. It wasn't a huge hit, not as big as it should have been, I think. And most people will know that song.
It's a radio staple, though. Radio staple through.
Oh yeah,
out the.
You'll still hear that to this day on oldies radio and classic rock radio. Then almost kind of like the cult connoisseur's choice for Spirit fans, this album called Clear, their third record that I really haven't gotten into yet. And then the Sardonicus album, and the band's kind of fallen apart at this point. The Sardonicus album really stands out. So they've been produced by Lou Adler. Their records just they're lacking that sonic punch. They're just kind of light in the bottom. Sardonicus is a masterpiece of production, and it's fascinating to me because the producer of this record is David Briggs, who's best known for his work with Neil Young. And most of his work with Neil Young is raw. It is the opposite of overproduced. It's kind of raw, first take quality, gritty. This is anything but. This is a psychedelic delight, masterpiece, headphones, classic, all kinds of stuff going on in the mix with overdubbing and voices and instruments and special effects, really cool psychedelic effects. Start to finish, this record is just a bomb. It is so cool. And really unlike anything else David Briggs did in his canon. Like I said, most of his work with Neil Young. So as this record is released, the band is kind of falling apart. They were touring it, but they split up soon after. So there's not a ton of concerts out there of them playing this material, sadly. And then, Randy, already kind of a spacey guy, starts going off the rails a little bit. He had a riding accident, fell off a horse, had a traumatic head injury. Then it kind of had a mental breakdown. So the band breaks up. He goes solo, releases this bizarre album called Captain Copper and the Fabulous Twirlybirds. And if you've ever seen the cover of this record, this is like, so Randy California, I kind of think of him as the Jewish Hendrix. He had this big frizzy hair, weird looking guy. And then he starts growing his beard out, and he just looks like this super freak, especially on the cover of that album. I mean, back then he looks like, when we were kids, Sheryl, when we were kids in the 70s, if you saw a gang of bikers coming up on the freeway, you'd be a little nervous. I mean, there were still these outlaw characters back then. And he looked like some Hell's Angels guy. And his cohorts on the cover look the same. It's a black and white, really stark cover. There's a helicopter on the cover, and he looks like the most drugged out, spaced out, freaky rock dude you've ever seen in your life, with his crazy hair, big beard, mirrored sunglasses. And the album is dark and heavy and trippy and just killer Hendrix-inspired guitar workouts and hard funk back. I mean, it is a cult. I mean, I keep forgetting about this. I need to get this into my life soon, now that I'm getting into this Spirit record. And so he released this album. He's clearly going out there. He has this breakdown. He ends up in Hawaii, essentially living on the beach, penniless, gets taken in by this Christian family, kind of has a, born again epiphany. He said he was working at McDonald's at some point when this guy should have been this massive. I mean, again, we're getting back to Moby Grape. These guys should have been legendary, multi-million-dollar rock stars, and they're just living in obscurity. California, this guy had just rock stars screaming from this guy. Talent out the wazoo, charisma, imagery, and he's living destitute, working McDonald's in Hawaii. Finally gets regrouped. Now, there was a record recorded before Spirit of 76 came out. Didn't come out until the 80s, and it's never. It was just kind of this lost classic for years. Rhino Records put it out, called Adventures in Potato Land. I haven't gone down that road yet. There's just so much out there to be discovered with this guy. But then this Spirit of 76 album comes out. Actually came out in 75, late in 75. So after Randy kind of went off the rails, he's got his life back together. He's reunited with Cass, his stepfather, and they're starting to tour again with another group. The guys who were in the original incarnation of Spirit, Jay Ferguson, who was the other lead vocalist, songwriter, Mark Andes, wonderful bass player, who would go on to be in Firefall and Heart, and would reunite with Randy and Cass over the years a couple of times. And then John Locke, the jazz keyboard player, as I mentioned. But this album comes out, and it's essentially just Randy and Cass, almost entirely them on these recordings. Some contributions on bass by a guy named Barry Keane, and somebody else played some keyboards. But almost everything you hear on this record is recorded by Randy California and Ed Cassidy. Now, compared to Sardonicus, which was this lush, beautifully produced, big budget, major label album that wasn't a big hit at the time, it was a grower, though. It was a grower. It eventually became their biggest selling album, but it didn't sell a ton at the time. There was no big hit single off it at the time. We're talking about Sardonicus now, 1970. After the band had broken up, they released a greatest hits album, and then Mr. Skin was re-released a couple years later after the band had broken up as a single and got a lot of radio airplay and some sales. So things started to pick up for these guys. The band name got back out there. They re-released their 4 previous albums, and then they're touring again. They had a break. They were opening for 10 years after. 10 years after, I had to cancel a gig in Tampa. Spirit said, hey, we'll take it. We'll be the headline act. They ended up selling like 6,000 tickets and making some pretty good coin on this show in Tampa. And they took the money. They went into a studio in town and knocked this record out in just a matter of days. So it's not a big budget recording. It is not an audiophile masterpiece by any stretch of the imagination. Heavily overdubbed. Like I said, Randy California played nearly all the instruments. Of course, Cassidy, who's an incredible drummer, does all the percussion. I've only listened to sides 1 and 2. It's a double album. So they'd amassed all this new material after they'd started touring again and basically collected the best of it on this. They got a deal with Mercury Records, a 4-album deal, put this out late in 75. I'm just starting to learn more and more about this. They commissioned a guy named, he goes by the name of Jack Bond on this record, but his real name is Bert Schonberg. I just started reading about Bert Schonberg this morning. Psychedelic pioneer artist. He started putting out these really trippy works of art years before anybody knew what psychedelia was. And he's kind of involved in this too. There's these spacey little interludes with guys speaking with like backwards effects and echo, and you can't understand what they're saying. It's just all very weird. And so we're talking late 75 here. So psychedelic music at this point in time, very much out of fashion. So this doesn't really jive with the times at all. So by late 75, disco is becoming big and everything is getting more of a dance attitude. And this kind of flies in the face of that. It's still spacey, trippy, Hendrix-inspired guitar, still kind of that 60s vibe and the lyrics, counterculture vibe, very much out of step with the times. But again, this record I'm still in the early stages of listening to it. I got through all of the disc 1, which is sides 1 and 2 of the original vinyl record, and I'm really falling in love with it. It starts really interestingly. So it's titled Spirit of 76, comes out on the eve of the bicentennial, and the first track on the record is a medley of America the Beautiful, the patriotic song, which merges into Bob Dylan's The Times They Are A-Changin'. So kind of making a little political statement there with the state of America at this time. Still a lot of political turmoil just coming out of Watergate and an era that's sadly very similar to the one we're living in right now with inflation and gas lines and political turmoil and turbulence throughout the world. I mean, you remember when we were kids, it seemed like there was a hijacking every other week. All kinds of, you had IRA bombings in England. You had anarchist terrorist activity in the continent in Europe, all kinds of stuff. And the Cold War, very frosty at this time, both the U.S. and Russia amassing nuclear armaments. So a lot of negativity, a lot of turmoil in the world. So I'm making a little statement about American politics at this time. But then you just go on this. There's this spacey kind of relaxed vibe to the album. Like I said, a lot of overdubs. Now, when I say Hendrix-inspired guitar, you don't get a lot of the show-off pyrotechnics, more of the layering and really funky rhythm work. Jimi Hendrix, in addition to being this incredible blues-inspired lead player, was one of the great rhythm guitarists too. In fact, if you're talking about guitar heroes, Hendrix and Eddie Van Halen, two guys who are about as good a rhythm players as they were lead players when you really listen closely to their work. And Randy California definitely fits in that description as well. He does a super cool, funky cover Rufus Thomas's Walking the Dog. Aerosmith did that on their first record. And there's a lot of cover songs on here. So not only does it do the Bob Dylan song to open disc one, side one of the album, but closing disc one of the CD and side two of the double album is one of the greatest Dylan covers I've ever heard. Like a Rolling Stone.
Huh.
His version of Like a Rolling Stone is amazing. Yeah. All this layering going on, incredible spacey vibe to it. Gotta hear it. So that's kind of the bookend of disc one. And I haven't even started listening to disc two of this yet. And I'm just loving disc one. And so already as an avowed Spirit fan who treasures the Sardonicus album, I think at this point, just having listened to half of this might be my second favorite Spirit album. And this is just the first of 4 albums they released on Mercury. He recorded a ton of music under the radar, very much a cold artist at this point. Again, a guy with the talent and charisma to have been this massive rock star, and he had that rock star presence on stage, incredible player, but very much a cult artist, and he would remain so for the rest of his all too short life. He died tragically and heroically in 1997 off the coast of Molokai in Hawaii, saving his son from rip current. He actually drowned, but saved his kid. And the amazing thing to think about was how young Randy California was at this point in time. He's still only like in his mid-20s. And he'd already lived this rock and roll lifetime with this previous incarnation of his band, Spirit, this amazing run of 4 records, and this epic psychedelic classic for 1970. Had this metal breakdown in his life, had to come back from that. And still just, at an age where a lot of people are just getting started in their careers when this record came out. I find that fascinating.
Yeah.
But this one,
give it a listen. I haven't spent time with that album. I have listened to Sardonicus and the first album, but I haven't listened to this one yet.
Weird thing about Sardonicus too is I'd had those 4 Spirit albums in my collection for years. And Mr. Skin, the song, I'd always loved that. It's on a mixed CD I have. This core mixed CDs my wife and I made for our wedding. It's on one of those. So I'd listen to that a lot over the years consistently. And then one day I just had this thing pop into my head. I'm like, I really got a feeling that I need to go back and listen to this record, that I'm missing out on something. And I pulled it out and listened again. I'm like, this might be my favorite. I just fell in love with it and then started listening to it nonstop. And now it's my, at least at this point in my life, it's my favorite album. And it just came to me one day. Yeah.
So going to the Mojo questionnaire again, we now know what you're currently listening to. And the next question is, when push comes to shove, what's your all-time favorite album?
Yeah, that's it. 12 Dreams of Dr. Sardonicus is the one. And I mentioned early on that Ziggy Stardust and Spiders from Mars, we talked about that in our first podcast from 72, the album of the year for me that year. That was my favorite record for a long, long time. My first favorite album of my life was Blondie's Parallel Lines. That was the first. If you're asking me, that's the next Mojo question, right? What's the first record you bought?
Yeah, what's the first record you bought?
The first single was Cars by Gary Newman, but the first album was Blondie's Parallel Lines. And that was my favorite record for years as a kid. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, well, what about, which musician would you like to be? It says rather be, but which would you want to be?
That is really tough. That is really tough. So like I told you, when you can't come up with an answer right away, you just got to go with the top of the mind response.
First thing.
Which musician would you want to be? What band would you want to be in? I think maybe the best live band of that early 70s era. And, I've said it before, 1971, I think best year for rock and roll, best music. John Lord of Deep Purple. I've always loved that heavy Hammond sound. So he's got that, the overdriven Hammond organ going through a Leslie speaker to create that, that kind of crusty, scratchy tone. And then the Hammond, the way he used it percussively, super cool. Mm-hmm. The guy was an incredible musician. When I was a kid, first getting into music, if I wanted to more, instead of playing the tennis racket in the mirror, I had a desk and a mirror bureau in my bedroom, and one of those lamps. I don't even know what you call them, that have like the springs where you can kind of move them up and down and across. And
Yeah.
you know what I'm talking about. It was bright
Yeah.
yellow,
Yeah.
and it had the, it had like the the lamp thing around the light bulb, and then that kind of like cylindrical thing going up from that. Can you picture what I'm
Yeah.
talking about? That
Yes.
was
Yes.
like, that would be like my mic stand and microphone if I were
microphone.
and the desk
What's your
would be
keys?
my keyboard. And I would do that in the mirror
Nice.
instead of playing the tennis racket. So I in my dreams, in my rock and roll dreams, I was a keyboard player. And
Yeah.
as a kid, I wouldn't have been thinking along the lines of John Lord. As an adult, probably the coolest keyboard player in a rock band. So that's my answer, I guess, in so many words.
That's a good one. Okay, so what do you sing in the shower?
I try to find songs that fit my vocal range, and there's two that spring to mind that I've probably sung the most in the shower over the years. One would be "Soul Love" by David Bowie off Ziggy Stardust. The other one would be "Beginnings" by Chicago. Robert Lamb on the vocal, who is there. That is right in my vocal wheelhouse.
When I'm with you.
When I'm with you.
Oh, yeah.
There's a 70s.
That song. That is a good one
There's
to sing.
There's a 70s lyrics. Yeah. Oh, that's a great shower singing song. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good one.
I haven't done that in a long time, but that would be in my shower song Hall of Fame.
Shower top 10. Okay, so what's your favorite Saturday night record?
Whoo! It might be the song I'm adding to the playlist for 75, which we better get to pretty soon.
You're right. This is a good segue here. Okay,
but this is great.
Record.
We're to the point in time now where we can't cover a single year in a single episode, so we can go on these tangents now. We knew it was going to be more than one for 75, but just because it's on my mind, because we're doing 1975, this has been one of my favorite songs, if not my favorite song, from the day I first heard it, which was pretty much when it was released, and that would be Casey and the Sunshine Band. That's the Way. Parentheses. I like it.
Okay.
It would have to be a disco classic, and that is to me the apex of disco. That song right there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, what about a Sunday morning record?
I'm trying to avoid cliche here. A Sunday morning record, maybe something by Nick Drake, Pink Moon.
Mm-hmm. Well,
kind of a cliche
today's Sunday morning, and I woke up with na 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 na.
Oh yes, so did
baby,
I.
give it up, baby, give it up.
This podcast has spun completely out of control. We're going to be breaking format because we're supposed to be talking about 1975, and that's the way I like it. But and Sheryl and I, we text back and forth. We do the same thing, getting ready for the show. Prep by listening to some of the music and then going on YouTube, looking for vintage clips. And wow, last night was amazing. Last night was incredible. And
we need to tell them what the songs are, because these are both the songs from 75 that are
all right.
the picks for the playlist.
So the song, do you want to start with Casey? We better start with Casey since we already talked about it.
Yeah.
So that's the way. Pretty much everybody our age remembers that song. It's just incredible rhythm, heavy bottom, hooks out. Every bit of that song is a hook. I mean, you got to be.
Yeah.
Casey, Harry Wayne Casey's the guy's name. Casey, a takeoff on his name, his last name Casey. And Richard Finch was the bass player in Casey. It's pretty much those guys were the brain trust of Casey and the Sunshine Band. TK Records. So our last podcast for 74, we talked about Rock Your Baby. They were behind that. They created the track for George McCrae. Too high for them to sing, so they bring George in. He sings it, blah, blah, blah. We already told the story. So at that point, Casey and the Sunshine Band hadn't had any hits yet. But shortly after that, they did. I believe Boogie Shoes was the first hit. I didn't think I loved that song, and then I listened to it last night. Yeah, I do love it. It's great. But That's the Way is the pinnacle for me. Since we're running out of time, just to keep a long story short, the most meaningful aspect of that song for me personally at this point in my life, remember, I had this record from a little kid, spun on my record player, loved it. But at a certain point as a youngster, not as a kindergartner, or I guess it would in first grade when that came out, and
Yeah.
second grade when I would identify Casey and the Sunshine Band as my favorite band. I didn't have this acuity yet, but not too much later. A big step forward in my ability to appreciate music was identifying individual elements of a track in a song and how different elements of the song come together to make it work. And it was the horn chart in this song, the horn hook in this song. For the first time in my life, I'm listening to a song, but I'm just hearing one individual aspect of that song from the track that's standing out. And it's those horn charts. I'm like, yeah, that really lifts the record. I mean, this incredible horn riff. For those of you who can't hear it, just thinking back, it's da 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 da. These horn, and if you see the performance clip online, the horn players, of course, are doing what I'm doing, going back and forth on the beat like that. Just the incredible rhythm, the syncopation, the way everything weaves together. And the hook, I mean, it starts with that incredible hook from the background singers.
Starts with the
great hook, and that reels you in right away. And then the rhythm, and you're hooked right away by the rhythm. This incredible bottom end, and then those horns, and the it just in syncopate. It all weaves together amazingly well. The other aspect of that song that I recall clearly, I mentioned second grade, identifying Casey and the Sunshine Band as my favorite band. It really seemed to me at the time, at least among boys my age in second grade, you were either a disco fan, Casey and the Sunshine Band was the most popular disco act at the time, or you were a Kiss fan. And I got to think, as second graders, most of these Kiss fanboys at that age, I would say 9 out of 10 had to have had older brothers that introduced them to Kiss. Because that's skewing a little older than second grade. But you can understand why that would appeal to kids, the whole comic book aspect of Kiss, and the visuals and all that. But that was my perception at the time. It's like, all right, you're either a Casey and the Sunshine Band fan or you're a Kiss fan. And I was very firmly in the disco camp at that age.
Hey, well, Kiss embraced disco at a later time too. They had a disco hit.
I was never a big Kiss fan, still am not. There's a couple of songs I really like. My favorite Kiss song was performed not by Kiss, a cover version by Lenny Kravitz of the song Deuce, which is on the Kiss My Ass, Kiss Regrooved tribute album. Killer track. Killer cover. Smokes anything Kiss ever did, in my opinion. And there's a couple other really cool things on that record, too. Garth Brooks does a Kiss cover that's really good. I know it sounds crazy.
I'll have to check it out.
But yeah, so that's the way. That is my personal choice for the playlist from the year 1975. Sheryl, what is your choice for 1975?
Mine is Jackie Blue by the Ozark Mountain Daredevils, which most people probably don't recognize the band name, but I'm sure you've heard the song. It's kind of a one-hit wonder.
Vibe. Yeah.
It's such a great song. Probably one of the best one-hit wonders, actually, I have to say. They were kind of more of a country rock band, really. And they did have a top 40 hit with their debut single in 74. This song was written by their drummer. His name's Larry Lee. Apparently he was inspired by this drug dealer bartender guy he knew, Jackie Blue. But Glenn Johns, who a lot of people will recognize his name, if not just from the Get Back, Peter Jackson, if you've watched it, because he was the engineer for the Let It Be album. But he also went on to produce. What's that?
I'm sorry. So his sartorial choices during that era when he was working with the Beatles, that's one of the more entertaining threads in that documentary, seeing what he was wearing at the time. Just ridiculous.
Yes. Yeah, there was a lot of talk about that after that came out. Anyway, so he produced the Eagles. He actually produced Who by Numbers, which is my album from that year. Anyway, he's worked with tons of bands. People will know who he is. That's going to happen next episode. Yeah. So anyway, he really was impressed by the song. They didn't have any lyrics for it. They just had the music. They had recorded the music. Actually, they recorded the instrumental back for it, but they had no lyrics. So he kind of pushed them to finish it because he thought, this song could be a hit. So actually he and the guitarist ended up writing new lyrics that were more, they turned Jackie Blue into a woman instead of being this guy. And then, from there, I think part of it too is Larry Lee was the vocalist on the song, which he hadn't really sang a lot of their other songs. And his
wasn't he the
vocals
drummer?
have kind of that Beach Boys. He's the drummer.
Yeah.
His vocals are kind of more that Beach Boys and almost like Fleetwood Mac sounding. And so I think that actually really helped the song too, because I think his vocals are great. Apparently it kind of became a bit of an albatross for the band, because that was not
Unlike
really
a lot of
in
their
the
other
style
music.
of what they were. Yeah. And the record label really wanted them to continue on that vein, because it was a number one hit for them, and they were just like not interested. So the band kind of fell apart after that. Anyway, that's my pick for 75.
Yeah, that's a great song. A great song
on a playlist.
And it's funny, Ozark Mountain Daredevils really more in a southern rock vein. A lot of their music.
Yeah.
The other song springs to mind for them is called "If You Want to Get to Heaven." If you want to get to heaven, you got to raise a little hell. Wasn't that Ozark Mountain Daredevils? Yeah, I think. And it's kind of off-putting when you see a performance clip of Jackie Blue to see what they look like, because it just doesn't fit the vibe of the song when you just hear the song. These big, hairy southern rock guys, bearded guys. And then the drummers, I'm always fascinated by drummer lead vocals on songs too.
Me too.
That song just got the coolest vibe. And it just, in my mind, when I hear the lyrics, it seems to be about this chick who's maybe having some personal problems, maybe some drug problems. And Jackie Blue, to me, I'm hearing a reference maybe to Downers there with blues. I don't know if that was part of the reasoning behind it, but it's kind of got that 70s druggy feel to it, but just a super cool vibe on that track. Really, really catchy tune. Good choice. Really good choice for 1975. We're running out. We got to get our hit song in there, but going back to Casey, so doing our YouTube prep.
Oh, yeah.
I discovered this Casey and the Sunshine Band song that I'd never heard before. Sheryl, you remembered it. You remember hearing it.
I remember it. Oh, yeah.
I never remember hearing the song at the time. They had a late hit in the early 80s, like almost in the mid 80s. At this point,
well, it came out in 82, but it wasn't a hit until 84.
It hit bigger in Europe than the US, but it was a minor hit. It actually made the top 20 in the United States. Called "Give It Up." Insanely catchy song, and it's still it's one of those. I called it a weapons grade earworm. It is so simple and childlike, but that was the beauty of a lot of Casey and the Sunshine Band's hits. They're just super catchy, fairly. I mean, there's intricacies going on with the rhythmic backing, but the tune itself, they're all about dancing. It's all dance music. It's all about dancing. And the vocals and melody lines, that's not the highlight of these songs, but they're hooky. They're all hooky. They're simple and they're hooky. And this is maybe the hookiest of them all.
It is. It's like the stickiest song ever. I can't get it out of my head.
Baby, give it up.
Baby, give it up. Give it up. Baby, give it up.
That is so hooky that
on and on like that.
If I ever heard that before, I couldn't have forgotten about it. So I just somehow it completely passed me by at the time. But it's strange to me to see Casey and the Sunshine Band having a hit at this time when their version of disco couldn't have been more unfashionable, which is kind of silly when you think about it, because disco never really died. It just it got mechanized, it got synthesized, it got distilled down and simplified. I loved disco as a kid, loved to this day, but I loved the big disco productions, the horn sections, the string sections, the multiple people playing, and it became all this stuff became synthesized, played on keyboards and computers, but it was still essentially the same kind of music. So this song is cool. It's got like one foot still planted in that classic disco era and feel and vibe to it, but the instrumentation is very much more current for the times.
80s.
82.
Yeah.
I watched like 5 different videos of it last night, and there's 2 that you gotta go on YouTube and watch. One of them, it's really simple. It's him, with some kind of effects in a room. Very, very cliched clothing of the 82 era with the like the short sleeve shirt where the sleeves are way too short. The pants are way too
he's got
tight.
His tight pants on. Yeah.
These tight turquoise pants. He's wearing boots and he's doing these slick dance moves, but he's nailing the moves. He is nailing the moves, but I'm watching this and all I can think of is this guy worked his ever-loving tail off to get these dance moves down because he is not a natural dancer at all.
It's so ironic. Yeah. It's so ironic, actually, that this dance music that he was creating, and he is a terrible dancer. He has like no rhythm. And you go back and you realize, oh, that's why he was always standing behind a keyboard.
Yes.
So that they could cover up the fact that he could not dance. I mean, it's ridiculous.
So
he has no moves.
I don't know the provenance of this particular video. It says like Pop TV on a so I'm guessing it was like some European music show.
Yeah.
And they produced it for the show. So it's him. He's singing the song in his, 80s clothes. There's probably some fog effect. I can't even remember now. He's got two background kind of singer dancers behind him.
Yeah.
And then the thing that struck me too is if you look at the Casey and the Sunshine Band performance videos from the 70s, you'll not see any vintage live clips. It's all lip sync stuff from TV shows. But he's got this perma smile on. It's good time music. Everybody's having a blast. Yeah. They're all loaded on lewds and coke and whatnot. Yeah. And he's got this big smile all the time on all these songs because they're happy. It's good time music. Now we're in the 80s. New wave has kicked in. Punk has happened. Now it's all about attitude. So he's got this sneer on his face, this frown, all this attitude. It just cracked me up to see that.
There's
transition.
One time where he smiles, and it's after he does his little dance routine at the beginning, and he's almost to the end, and he has this little smile, and it's almost like, look, I did it. I was able to finish this dance routine without making a total complete fool of myself. And then he goes back to the total frown, and it's pretty funny.
So that's one video. Then there's an actual music video, which it has to be seen to be believed. It has to be seen to be believed.
Ridiculous.
I have never seen a more jarring collision of visuals and music that had absolutely nothing to do with one another. It's just this epic, cinematic, bizarre video story, incomprehensible, freaky.
And it makes no sense with the song at all. Like, not at all. It looks like they're trying to replicate a Duran Duran video from
exactly
like Seven and the Ragged Tiger era, because it's got that like the way they're dressed and the background but it is so ridiculous and it makes no sense. But it's definitely worth watching.
My final feeling in a nutshell, but the vibe of that video, it's like Duran Duran crashing one of Freddie Mercury's most decadent parties in the 70s with freaky people everywhere and weird crap going on in every corner of this. And the storyline of that video, it's like they're trying to tell a story. It is so incomprehensible. He's got like this little fairy girl. They're like on a raft he's like asleep on a raft in a swamp, and he wakes up and there's this little fairy girl who leads him to this mansion where they're having this crazy, weird, freaky
it's some kind of like a dream sequence or something. But he also looks like he just woke up in a dream. Like, how did I get here, and why am I here too?
Would you say he has a bemused look on his face throughout a lot of that? Like when he's kind of going through the corridors.
Which is how I feel too when I'm watching it. So we'll have to leave a link on the we'll leave a link on the show notes so that you guys can check it out too. Amazing in two respects. A, how did I miss this song at the time? And B, how had I never seen this crazy video that goes with the song before? I mean, it's incredible. And then that was it. He kind of, and I saw an interview with him much later. He just dropped out of music for like 10 years. He'd had enough. He was totally burned out. And then kind of when there was a disco revival that started happening in the 90s. And then I remember living in Atlanta. Back on the circuit again.
70s all of a sudden had a resurgence. When I was living in Atlanta in the mid 90s, there was like this club with a 70s theme. We'd go there all the time, and it was a big thing then. And then, he jumped on that opportunity, kind of an opportunist really, He was backroom guy, studio guy. And then all of a sudden, he's out front of this mega hit selling. Casey and the Sunshine Band had 5 number one hits, or 4 or 5 number one hits and a number 2 during the run of the 70s. They were
and
huge.
You know them all. You know all those songs.
Oh, yeah.
They're so ingrained. And
Boogie Shoes, Get Down Tonight, Keep It Coming, Love, Shake Your Booty, Shake, 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 Shake your booty.
Oh, yeah. Everybody knows those songs. Yeah.
Every one of them just incredibly hooky, incredibly catchy, can't sit still to. So it just fascinated me that they had this out of left field hit in the early 80s and it somehow passed right, because I was a huge fan when I was a kid. They were my band. They were, when I was in second grade, that was my band. That was my favorite band, man. Casey and the Sunshine Band. But wow. So we've obviously been long-winded on this episode. We didn't get to our first hit song. We're picking 2 hits from the era and 2 personal classics as well. 2 each. So 6 songs in total from 1975. So, and then as usual, we're going to talk about our favorite albums from the year as well. You already mentioned yours, The Who by Numbers. Mine is going to be a rock classic. So 75, we got lots more goodies to come on our next episode. We'll pick our favorite albums. We'll talk about the 2 biggest hits of that year that will go on our playlist as well. And then we got 2 more personal choices to come as well. I haven't figured mine out yet. I haven't figured out my number 2. I got a lot of contenders, Sheryl. A lot of good records came out that year.
I know, me too.
Surprising number of good singles and albums came out in 75. So that is to come. But until then, you've been listening to Matt and Sheryl's GenExcellent Playlist. I'm Matt.
I'm Sheryl.
All right. We'll see you later, everybody.